Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. That was not the right sequence, but you know what I mean, because everybody's listening from all over the world. Jerry Tavares here, and I'm with Tony, and today we're going to be talking about team communication. Tony and I have been discussing outside of the podcast, and we have been talking about what happens in our workshops when we mix our leaders or leaders with employees, and we run these communication workshops. And it's phenomenal to see how even though they are learning the different ways that they can communicate, how they put that aside, get emotional, and actually go back to their communication preference, which later or always seems to create conflict between them. Now, this is a big problem. And as you might be aware, it's a huge problem because one, employees don't feel safe to speak out. Two, they don't take accountability or responsibility because if the manager is always taking charge in speaking, then why should they speak? Three, they don't feel heard because every time they start talking, the manager normally just eviscerates them and starts speaking and cutting them off. So then what's the point of speaking? And last but not least, which happened to me a couple weeks ago during a workshop where one of the attendees, one of the employees, said that he wasn't sure if he was going to stay at the company because he was tired of the manager just being so hardcore, so strong, so hard-headed that he didn't know if this was for him anymore. Now, this person was the one that organized the workshop and is so attentive and so caring for this organization, and they are about to lose this person. So this couldn't come at a better time, this conversation that we're going to have here today. So I hope that you enjoy and you get something out of it, which we like to share in our workshops. So enough from me. Tony, tell us a little bit about you before we start.
Hey, Jerry, thanks for getting me here. We've spoken about it quite a bit. Communicating has been the biggest issue in all organizations with all leaders. And we all know that, and yet, it doesn't get solved. How is that, right? So we need to really kind of pinpoint the real problem that we're dealing with and find out, okay, what are the solutions we can have? And then what are the skills that really make effective communicating? Now, for me, what really hit me a few years ago was that a multinational company back home in Malaysia, they called me in and they said their managers needed to learn communicating skills. I say, what's the problem? And they said, for 3 consecutive years, the feedback from the engineers to the HR department is that my manager is not communicating with me, is not listening to me for 3 consecutive years. And after the 3rd year, with the same exact feedback, they said, we got to do something about it. And that's when I was called in to help them with regards to at least getting the fundamental skills that makes a difference in communicating. And you're absolutely right, Jerry. The key thing is, do these teams that work with leaders feel safe in expressing themselves, in engaging, in communicating with the leaders, feel completely safe to be able to do whatever they need to do? And that's really the point, right? So we said, let's kind of identify what are the real challenges that's come up with leaders communicating with their teams. That's one aspect of it, though, by the way. Yeah. And of course, the other problem that comes in also is that the team members' perspective of the communicating challenges with their leaders is quite different from what the leaders are experiencing in their challenges. And that's really interesting, right?
And that is exactly the point, Tony, because when we talk about leadership and communication, I was yesterday in the Hacking HR live podcast or whatever, which is one of the most amazing lives that they do on LinkedIn. It's called Hacking HR. If you can join, please join because it's amazing. I learned so much from it. And they were talking about inclusion and psychological safety. And the entire time they're talking about what we're talking about right now, how leaders should communicate better, how leaders should do this and should do that. And I'm thinking, because of the workshops that we do, I'm thinking, wait a minute, these people are people as well. And the reason why they communicate like that is for a specific reason. Now, when we unpack it, we have to also empathize with them and know that they're getting a lot of pressure from the top because they need to have their teams to perform at an optimum level. they also have a lot of pressure to meet the goals and the demands, and they just keep increasing. And if you complete that outcome, then you get even more on top of it. So they don't have the feeling that they actually can take the time with their employees to explain things, to communicate in a softer, nicer way, because there's no time in their minds. So we're going to be discussing that today because there is time, and there's a book I think called Think Slow, Think Fast or something like this. It's about slowing down so that you can go faster. Because what happens is that when managers don't communicate appropriately, they have to repeat themselves. And since you're going at the speed of light, you cannot be repeating yourself because you're wasting time. So then how do we do that? We're going to talk about it today. Tony.
Yeah. So, exactly the point, that's the stress they feel, and that's real. So the question is, how do I then make time? But the paradox is this: if you don't make time, you're going to spend more time correcting the errors, right?
Yeah.
So it's worth the investment, basically. So what are the primary challenges that leaders are facing or experiencing in communicating with their teams, right? And the most common one that comes up regularly is that there's no clear articulation of expectations. The people at work and the team people are not sure about what are really our project goals, what are the timelines, and what is my leader expecting of me in this particular project, right? So that's one big one. And it comes up every time, it seems obvious that it should be done, but somehow or other it's not being done precisely enough, A clear articulation of expectations, goals, timelines, and expectations of the team members. Second one is active listening. Now, we've heard this phrase a lot, active listening. What does it really mean, right? Well, the reality is this: 47% of the time in a research by Harvard University that says that our minds are wandering 47% of the time, which means that staying present in the communicating engagement with the staff is going to be a challenge. And it's not normal because it takes work. Because if 47% of the time your mind is wandering, you got to be really present. So active listening means being really present, listening to the concerns and feedback of the team members, and really, it's a skill that needs to be developed. That you have to really be present. Now, you can't be present if when your team member is speaking and you're thinking about what you're going to say.
Exactly. Yeah. Or finishing the sentences from the speaker because you are way ahead of the person. Exactly.
Yeah, and of course, when you're thinking about what you're going to say, then you're not listening. And you will miss what the member said, basically, So active listening is a skill that needs to be developed. And of course, transparency is also another big one. And underpinning transparency, of course, the trust level, right? Sometimes there's not communicating openly enough about the challenges that the project might be facing or the team might be facing, and the changes that can happen and the overall status of the project. This is another challenge. So, the leader has to decide how much do I need to tell, right? And from what we see is that team members are feeling that they are not told enough. So openness and transparency has to go up quite a bit,
Exactly.
And of course, the big one here also is, adaptability, because we all have our different styles of communicating. It's interesting if you, find out about what our preferred style of communicating. And fundamentally, there's 4 preferred styles of communicating. We all use 4 of them, but some might be more dominant. Some communicate it more effectively visually, some auditorily, some kinesthetically by feeling, and some digitally by logic. So each one of us has got preferred styles of communicating. So someone who's very visual would always like to see things, like to read emails, right? Someone who's auditory always wants to have a meeting and wants to hear it. And someone who's kinesthetic has to say, show me how to do it, basically. And someone who's digital, logical. And you know what? I've worked with electronic manufacturing services companies quite a bit in this field of communicating. And majority of the people in tech are more driven by logical communication or digital communication. So they're not so strong in visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Now, but then everybody's going to use all 4 of them. So if you're not adaptable, if you're not flexible in communicating in the language that the listener prefers, you're going to have challenges. So being able to be flexible in communicating style and not rigid and not say, that's the only way I can communicate. Yeah. And the fifth one is, giving constructive feedback. Now, giving feedback is also another very important skill, because sometimes we don't want to give feedback, especially when it's a difficult conversation, right? And then we delay it. And when we delay it, and the moment you don't give it in a timely manner and you do give it later, then it doesn't mean the same thing.
Yeah.
So, constructive feedback given timely and in a positive manner is very key. So these are the 5 key challenges leaders are struggling with in how to be able to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
What's your take, Jerry?
Well, going back on the feedback and what you ended, I just saw a post from Amy Jackson, I think her name is, on LinkedIn, and I loved it. Because she was talking about providing feedback in a way that that signals the other person's good intentions. So it means that when the example that she gave was that someone interrupted another person in the meeting, and the feedback was, when you interrupted John, it seemed like you want to make sure that our work in the team was seen by everyone and that it was taken into account. So what happened instead was that John got triggered and he got upset because he was interrupted. So knowing this, what would be a better strategy to approach this situation in the future, right? Turn it into a coaching question. So not just to tell the person what to do next, but actually help them reflect on the situation, signal their good intentions, because then the person is going to focus on the good intentions and will feel understood. And because this person didn't want to make John feel insecure or upset him. That's not what people tend to want to do. So this reframes the entire situation and puts the guard down for everyone so that they can receive the feedback. Another thing that you touched on was the 4 styles of communication. I also like to use the DISC model. They use it for personalities. I like to use it for communication preferences. So in the DISC model, if you're not aware of it, if you're red, you are hot-tempered, you are passionate, you like to do things fast, you are out extrovert. I was thinking in German. Oh my God. You're an extrovert. So you communicate a certain way. So if you go the other way, then you go to the green, which is where the person feels at ease, needs time, is an introvert, likes the community, work with people together, which would be the opposite of red. Red just wants to be by themselves and go at the speed of light, When you have these 2 different communication preferences, what happens is that the interpretation is incorrect. So when green speaks, someone in the green area speaks, they speak as a team and slow and making sure everybody is all right. And red is thinking, oh my God, this is going to take so much time. I'm already out, and vice versa. So it is very important to know about the different communication styles and preferences so that you can better communicate and get your message across, because then you won't have to repeat yourself.
Yeah. And, then they've got to develop the skill of detecting the different styles while they're communicating, right?
Correct.
And so, that still needs to be developed, In my practice of NLP, we call it the operating system that we have in terms of the way we think. We call them meta programs. And so, we have to be able to detect that. For example, a simple meta program is global and specific. Some people are just very globally perspective, and some just want details, right? So when you communicate with someone with a global perspective, he's not going to listen to the details you're going to tell them. So you got to find a way of setting it down and understand and get to the detail, basically. Where someone who's detailed doesn't get the big picture naturally.
No.
So it takes a little bit more work to be able to bring that into alignment within detail and global, right? So that's why, flexibility in communicating is so critical. because we can only communicate from our map. And when we keep doing that, we don't recognize the other one. So for me, one principle I use in keeping on track with communicating is the meaning of my communication is the response I get.
Yeah.
The meaning of my communication is the response I get. So if the response I'm getting does not jive, then my communication needs to be adjusted, not the response.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it tells you a lot, right? It tells you a lot how you have to maneuver that communication. If you see that your point is not getting across, is
Yep.
most of the time the communicator's fault, right? Because
Yeah.
the is being decoded differently. Whether you're triggering their ego, whether you're triggering their insecurities, whatever it is, you have to be aware of that. So as you said, number one is awareness, and especially when things get heated, because we are talking about theory right now, and it all sounds good in theory, but when things get heated, your automatic pilot kicks in, and that's when you need to have that awareness. So then people say, well, how can I develop that awareness, right? Well, one thing that you can do, for those who are listening attentively right now, here it is. You have to forecast. In the morning, you think about the meetings that you're going to have, and you think about the ways that you might get triggered that might push you to act that specific way. And once you do, you reformat it, right? You think it differently. Well, if this happens, instead of reacting how I normally act, how can I act in a different way to make sure that my message is being conveyed appropriately? That is a really good tool that you can do, which is forecasting. There's another word for it that I cannot find. What is it, Tony?
Anticipation.
Anticipation. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I thought about when you start talking about that, because I think when you do that anticipation exercise in the morning, especially when you have some very key meetings happening later, what you're really doing is you're rewiring your neurons in the brain to anticipate that. And when it does come up later on, you're already prepared, you see? Yeah. It's a very, very powerful exercise, actually.
And for my red people, for the people who can care less about how other people feel, here's the answer why you should try this. Because this is going to save you time, as well as it's going to save people from having any bad feelings, which is going to hinder the project or the speed of the project. So if you want people to work fast, precise, and to deliver, then you want to make sure that you are achieving this so that you don't trigger any negative emotions that you can avoid, so that they can perform at their highest level. So that is what's in it for you. That is the reason why you should do it. So it's not just for them, it's actually also for you.
Yeah. And, so that's from the, what they found about the challenges that leaders are experiencing and face in communicating. Then when that's the other side of the story, right? What about the team members? Yeah.
I was just thinking that. Exactly. Yeah.
So if I'm a team member of a group, right, and I've got a leader, it seems that the perspective of the team member is quite different from what the leader is experiencing. And as I looked at those, challenges of team members, it takes me back to what we did a month ago, Jerry, on on employee engagement.
Yeah.
Some of that challenges they face actually is driving employee engagement. So if leaders can get much better at recognizing these challenges or these perspectives from the team member, they're actually moving ahead in increasing employee engagement. So, with go back to that you'll want to go, just understand what we're talking about when we say employee engagement, especially the Gallup Q12 questions. Absolutely critical also with communicating, right? So what are these challenges team members are facing? Well, we said the first one that leaders face was not articulating clearly the expectations.
Yeah.
This one is the same. The team members are saying they have lack of clarity of expectations.
And
so that's
and
really at least.
And sorry to interrupt you there, but just wanted to throw it in there that just because you think you're being clear doesn't mean that your communication is effective, because you can say, do this and do that. That is very clear. But people don't understand the gist of it, especially if they communicate differently. So being clear doesn't mean being concise. So that's also a point to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tony, go ahead.
Good, good. So they're saying, don't have clarity of expectations, no clarity about the goals, no clarity about timelines. I don't say zero, but, not enough to get it going faster enough. The second one is, not having enough opportunities to give input and feedback.
Yes.
Why? Because, the manager is expected to tell everything and, set up everything, but not listening for feedback, not listening for ideas. So team members really feel that, sometimes they can give a different perspective from where they're working, at least take that into account, but they feel that's not being given an opportunity to do so, right? And the third one is inconsistent communicating. Now, this happens a lot because today you say one thing and then you get squeezed, as a manager, get squeezed within your team and the leaders up above you. And then next day you have to come and say something else and say, wait, what's happening here? Yeah. So one needs to be able to frame that properly so that these changes can happen or will happen, but to be able to be transparent about it. Yeah.
Exactly.
If you're not transparent, then you'll be seen as being inconsistent. Your trust is broken actually when you're inconsistent. Yeah. The next one is lack of recognition. Now, this is also a big one in the Gallup Q12. But
that's a big one. Worldwide.
Recognizing. Yeah. You got something on that, right?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just excited about that topic because it's worldwide.
And this is one skill they found that most managers actually are weak in, recognizing the good work that people do.
Do you know why?
Basically.
Do you know what's happening in most of the managers' minds?
What do you think?
Well, for them, in their opinion, is not necessary. It is not.
It's part of the job.
It's part of the job. They don't need to tell you that you're doing a good job because in their minds, it is common sense. That's what you're getting paid for. So in their mind, I have had these conversations with many leaders, and that is what it is. You're getting paid for exceptional work, and when you do it, it's what I expected. It's nothing out of the extraordinary. So why should I tell you good job when that's what you're supposed to do? That's what's in their minds. And yet when we go to the other communication preferences, right, and different personalities, right, and different needs, then some people need more recognition than others. Other people need to be more in the spotlight than others. And so you need to be so sensitive to the needs of your employees to make sure that they are performing and delivering their best work.
Yeah. And the best way of recognizing people is when they least expect it.
Yeah.
It's a surprise, right? You can't have a meeting and say, so during this meeting, I want to recognize that on the agenda, we're recognizing these people. It's still useful, right? But that, one-to-one conversation you're having with your team member, and then at that point in time, when they're facing a challenge and you just say, hey, man, you did that great job on that one, I'm sure you can do it now, and that kind of thing, it goes a long way, basically. So managers and leaders need to do recognizing of their team members a lot more. Yeah. Another one that the team members are challenged with is the unclear career path. So they're not really sure, okay, I get all this done. What's my next step? What's my next move? That's not being discussed. Why? Because we're so caught up in the project and not even thinking about, where we're going to grow people. Yeah. So managers have got to be very clear about, projects have got a lifetime anyway. Yeah. They're not forever. Yeah. So along the way, they need to really discuss what's the career path of their team members, and they can at least, build up their skills, build up their, attitudes to get them to the next level, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we continue, and I forget, I would like to add something, because when we're talking about these changes and then these different strategies that managers and employees can use, something else that happens is like when they say, well, now that I am changing, this is going to seem unauthentic because I have never given praise really in the last 10 years. And now all of a sudden I start asking people how you're doing and giving people praise. It doesn't seem genuine because that's not how they know me. So to those people who think like this, I would say it is important that you communicate that you're going to be changing and trying new things and the reason behind. So if you don't give praise and you're going to start shifting, it is important that you gather your team in one of the meetings and say, by the way, I have been getting some observations from other people and also reflecting by myself. And I noticed that I don't recognize you guys for the great work that you do. So I think in the next weeks and months, you're going to see me approaching you and recognizing you for your work. Please, I just want to let you know that I am trying to improve myself and showing you guys how valuable you guys are. So this puts you in a different pedestal. Now people say, now I know why he or she is doing it. And it makes sense. And it sounds genuine because the person is genuinely trying to change him or herself, as well as just improve the team engagement in the team atmosphere. So then it comes genuine.
Yeah.
Tony, go ahead.
You know, what you just said just now, for a manager to come up front and say that, hey guys, I'm getting this feedback, I'm not recognizing people enough, and I want to make a change, right? That is already a high quality of courage and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that is valued very highly among team members of their leaders, basically, because not many leaders can do that, right? And if you want to can do that, that's already major, and it builds trust even deeper.
Yeah, it does.
So besides the communicating part, it really just shows that, you know, your willingness to be vulnerable and to come up with that kind of a statement, I think you get more trust from your team, basically. Yeah.
It goes far.
And the last one from the team member is that they have limited input in the decision making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
And we see that all the time because sometimes the manager takes everything, right? So in a meeting of a project, if there's a project meeting, right, the best thing the manager can do is be the last to speak.
Which is very hard for many managers. It's very hard.
It is. But when you hold back saying anything and facilitate the team members, you are actually drawing the best input you can get from everyone. And they will really feel that they are part of the decision-making process. Yeah? So the challenge for leaders is to be the last to speak in the meeting.
Yeah.
And then people recognize that, okay, yeah, he's considered everything, basically. Yeah.
And
so yeah, so you can see the perspective now, right? The problem, how it exists within. Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add that what happens in meetings is normally because leaders tend to think very fast and they want to take care of business very fastly because, again, lack of time. But when they're in a meeting, and as you mentioned, to speak last, what's going to happen is that when you throw a question as a leader, you're not going to see an answer right away because it takes time for these people who are on the other side, introverts, who care about hierarchy, not offending anybody. It takes a little bit of time for them to warm up and to say something about it. And then what you're going to see is that if you give it time, you don't speak, you give it at least 6 seconds, right? What you're going to see is that people are going to feel that they need to answer, and then they will start answering. And then you're going to see answers popping up faster and faster and faster, which is going to help you facilitate the meeting and make the meeting even more engaging and more collaborative. So just take your time, just wait, because some people need more time than others. So be gentle with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're just talking about this now, right? And good point you made is that you can't go tomorrow into the office and then act this way because they say, what the hell happened?
Yeah, right. What just happened? Did my voodoo work?
It needs to be cultured. It needs to be nurtured over time because it's a major change. It's a major change for a leader in a meeting to be the last one to speak. That's not easy. Yeah.
No, it's not easy.
But you'll be highly respected after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we've covered that two perspectives. Then, so what do we do now, right? Now, to move towards being able to communicate effectively, I think what's really key, and we spoke about it earlier, is that do the people in a team or in a group really feel psychologically safe? And that's the bottom line. Yeah. And the leader's role must be to build that psychological safety in their teams so that then you can have completely open communications and people will give feedback, people will help each other, that sort of thing happens, right? So, we do have a checklist for what amounts to group psychological safety, and we discuss it. We can let them have. We let the audience or the people listening have it, and you'll talk about it later. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are really eight really key elements of psychological safety. Yeah. And we go very quickly through that. The first one is, of course, the question of the truth and reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is truth and reality? Second one is the safety for openness. Yeah. The third one is the question of influence, power, and control, basically. Yeah. Who makes decisions? The fourth one is inclusion, social question of inclusion. Do the team members feel that they are being included in the whole discussion, in the whole conversation? Right. Yeah. One of the key factors of people leaving organizations is they lose their sense of belonging. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one is emotional, social. The question of fun and emotional enjoyment. Are your team members enjoying what they're doing? If it's a drudge every day coming to work on this project, that's not going to work. Yeah, that means there's no enough psychological safety there to be completely having fun and enjoying what you're doing, right? And then next one is respect. The question of significance. Do you respect their role in what they are doing? Yeah. Next one is collaborative social, the question of cooperation and working together. Is the team, cooperating and working together?
Yeah.
And the last one is self-actualization. Do the team believe that they can work and move to the question of being a world-class performance?
This is key. I'm losing you.
That's really where people want to be, right? How can be the best version of who they can be? And do they have the space to do that in whatever they're doing? And that's self-actualization, right? So these are the 8 factors that determines whether the group is highly effectively, and has got enough of these elements in place so that, you get to the highest level of being the best of who you can be as you do what you do, enjoying what you do.
Yeah, and also achieve amazing things that you can later put in that resume and be proud of. So Tony, since we are at the end of our podcast for today, we want to give the listeners not just one bonus, but we're going to give them 2 nice bonuses. As you said that about the about that assessment, I'm going to throw in also an assessment that I do in my workshops, and that is to find out what is your communication preference. And when you find out what your communication preference is, you can also do it with your team. And I kid you not, you will get a plethora of differences. You're going to see the differences in the way that they prefer to communicate. And this is going to open up the door for you and show you how you can just turn your communication around to their preferences so they can understand you better. So we're going to add that. You know what, Tony? I'm going to create a page right now on the website, and I am going to put those 2 assessments in there for the people who are listening. As soon as we click goodbye or leave here at the meeting, I'm going to go ahead and create a page for everyone. So I want to thank everyone here who has been listening.
Before you do that, Jerry,
What?
Before you do that, I just want to say that the 2 assessments can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So the 2 assessments that we're giving, right, it's really important that when they do those assessments, each will do that individually, and they should come together and share it and understand each other's preferences as a team.
Yeah.
And when you can do that, man, it's amazing how the vibrations then work, and the team starts to gel together because now you know each other better.
Yeah. You know what? In the page, I'm going to create a structure of what we do in the workshops so that they can just at least do one exercise so that they can try it out. And if they have any more questions, they can also come to us because we do that professionally and we offer that to companies. But just to get you started without needing us, we're going to offer that to you. And if you like more, of course, you know where you can come and get some more. We're like dealers here. All right, Tony. So have a wonderful day, Tony. Thank you so much for meeting me. And for everyone who is watching and listening, even if you're at work, it's okay because you're learning. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I believe Tony's heart as well. And we will see you on the next one.
Yep. See you. Thanks so much, Jerry.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.
Good. Bye-bye.